Hello and welcome to the CPL Newsroom. The hype video with royalty-free electronic music can only mean one thing, and that is that we are back for the 2024 Canadian Premier League season. I'm Charlie O'Connor-Clarke. That's Mitchell Tierney on the other side of the screen. Mitch, we're back. We are back. We had the first weekend of the 2024 season, year 6 in the Canadian Premier League. Uh, you know, it's good. It feels good. It feels good. Before we even get to these games and talk about what happened, we were both at games this weekend. I was in Ottawa. You're in Hamilton. Just how good was that feeling to, be out there, to see fans back in stadiums, to see these players on the pitch, and to finally have actual football to talk about rather than, guessing at who might be good because of the signings they've made.
Yeah, well, unlike you, I can talk about the good weather as well. It was fantastic weather down at Tim Hortons Field, so that helped. A bit windy, which definitely played into the occasion as well. But I mean, it's Tim Hortons Field; that kind of comes with the territory. So that wasn't necessarily surprising. But yeah, no, it was so great to get back out there, finally get this season started, and like you said, start to see some of these pieces that we've kind of imagined and prognosticated how they will do over the past few or over the next few months. But yeah, now we get to see them actually play out in action, and that's the last time I use a word with that many syllables. I mean that almost passed out
Prognosticated. I was
there.
gonna say, man. I think you used it right, but I'm not even gonna I'm not even gonna question it. Anyway, um, as I mentioned, we had 4 games. If you guys missed it, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you should, in case you missed 1 or 2 of the games, we'll run through the scores really quickly. Atletico Ottawa 2, York United 1 out in the capital in the first game of the season. We saw Manny Aparicio score his first goal for that team. We saw Chris Tuareg score his first goal for Ottawa. Austin Ricci with a goal for York, but 3 points for the home team. 3 points again for the home team in Hamilton. Forge 2, Cavalry 1. Actually, kind of a similar series of events where Sergio Camargo scores for Cavalry. Forge score twice, as they have been known to do, is to come from behind and win, thanks to Borges and Batty Banga. I guess it's the same ghosts haunting them as they as haunted Cavalry in the final a couple of months ago. Sorry, Cavalry. That night ended up with a Pacific 1-0 victory over Halifax, again at home. I'm in Salute from the penalty spot. And yesterday was the 4th game of the weekend, the only game of the day, out in Langley, BC. Vancouver FC with a club record 4 goals after falling behind Valor FC. Moses Dyer with his first for the team, Paris G with his first for the team, Gabby Bitar, David Norman Jr., David Norman, as he's actually being known these days, with the 4th goal, and obviously Jordy Swibel with the goal for Valor. That was a lot of football to watch in 1 weekend. It's a lot of fun to be back. So we've kind of gone coast to coast there, Mitchell. I think today, because again, this show is all about the games and having them back. We're just going to go game by game as we often do, and we're going to start again with the way the weekend started, and that's in Ottawa, where, as you mentioned, it was cold, it was wet. It was kind of horrible outside, to be honest, if I'm being fully honest now. But it was not horrible on the pitch. Maybe Benedict can roll the highlights here of this game, which was a lot of fun. Obviously, a lot of excitement coming in for this game with a pretty much brand new Ottawa team. I think 5 debuts in the starting 11. A lot of new players in York as well. Obviously, with an offseason of change for them. Mish, how much of this game did you see? I know you were in Hamilton, but did you get a chance to kind of get a first look at these 2 pretty exciting teams?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the whole thing in kind of bits and pieces. Like I caught the
Yeah.
I caught the game kind of after the first half from York. So I saw the what we will eventually see in the Atletico Ottawa comeback, and then went back and watched the first half, and honestly saw how hard done York were to maybe be in that position at that point. Um, but obviously a very entertaining game between two sides who are ambitious this year, and it took Ottawa a little bit of time to get going, as you might expect, with the side with so much turnover and so many new players playing in in some cases some new positions. But once they did, certainly a lot to be excited about for them, and the fact that so many of these players really hit the ground running, hit the ground scoring, and took the skin off their knees if they're Chris Twardek.
Oh
I
my
think you're
God.
excited if you're Atletico Ottawa fans.
Yeah, I think there was a lot to be excited about. The first half of this game, kind of mostly York, to be honest. I think they were the better team. Austin Ricci spoke after the game about how he felt they could have been up 3 goals at least by halftime. He personally obviously felt pretty brutal about his miss on a wide open goal. Made up for it by scoring early in the second half, but still, I think he'll feel like they maybe could have put a game to bed in the first half. But
Mhm.
Ottawa, a lot of their players kind of and Carlos Gonzalez kind of talked after this game about how there were nerves in the first half. There's a lot of pressure on his team. Expectations are very high in Ottawa because of all of the moves they made in the offseason, all the names they brought in: Manny Aparicio, Matteo Debriet, Amir Didic, Balu Tabla, all these guys. And there's pressure, as we've spoken about before, on this very show when we did the season previews. So there were clearly nerves in this group, but I think once they fell behind, what kind of impressed me was something we've never really seen from Atletico Ottawa, especially in the last couple of years under Gonzalez, is they found a different gear when they fell
Mhm.
behind. I think they had never, in a CPL regular season game, fallen behind and come back to win uh, under Gonzalez until this weekend, which is something that really impressed me. I don't know, Mitch, you've seen a lot of Ottawa teams and seen how a lot of the way they've won games in the past has been either it's staying defensively sound for most of the game and finding a goal in transition, something like that. But this game, they actually were able to kind of throw an attack at York after they fall behind. They throw the kitchen sink and they find those goals and they find those dangerous spaces. What was kind of impressive to you about that?
Yeah, there's just more there in attack than there ever has been before, isn't there? I mean, you look at that first goal, and you've got Balu Tabla who can take down a ball, shake off his defender and send in a good cross. You have someone
Mhm.
like Manny Aparicio who makes those smart late runs and is able to get in there and add numbers in the box, which is probably something that they haven't necessarily had in other years. So he's there to tap in a rebound where again, like in other years, uh, Vincentini makes that save and there's no one there around to get the
Yeah.
rebound. So that was impressive. Just the composure on that last goal. And again, you've got a fullback who's up there and in the box. That's not something that necessarily would have happened for Ottawa teams in the past. So I think there's just a lot more guys with that game breaking ability to create chances out of nothing, but also just the positional awareness and the aggressiveness to want to get up in those attacking areas, and that's exciting if you're an Ottawa fan.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about in preseason about there doesn't seem to be a way that you can put this team, take this squad and put a team on the pitch to go play defensive football. That
Hmm.
it's just not possible with this group of players. And I mean, we saw it. Like they both fullbacks, Matteo Debriet and Chris Twardek, are attacking players,
Hmm.
right? So they had, I think Gonzalez said they had something like 6 attacking players on the pitch in this game to start, and that's it's got to be fun as a coach to be able to put those players on the pitch together. But it dictates that this necessarily has to be an attacking team. I want to talk about Manny Aparicio, though. This is the second year in a row that he is a big story of the opening weekend. Obviously, he scored for Pacific in that derby to start last year. This time, yeah, exactly. The shush and the fans. That was a big moment early in the year last year. This time, it's Aparicio making his debut in new colors. Got to be honest, still looks weird to see
It
him in an
does look
Ottawa
a little
shirt.
weird, yeah.
Not quite used to that yet, but we'll get there. But again, he just rocks. Manny Aparicio is so good and so much fun to watch. The way he covers chances or covers ground. The way he, especially the second goal, the way he wins the ball in the box,
Hmm.
drives to the byline, and then you can kind of see just the difficulty it must have taken to, get his foot on the ball just in time before it goes over the line, get such a good touch on it with the outside of his right foot and have it land right at Twardek's foot for him to put it in
Hmm.
the goal. That was just such a cool moment. And obviously him being a big story. Carlos Gonzalez was asked about Manny after the game, and I really liked his answer. So I think if possible, we want to roll that clip and see what he had to say.
He's pure energy. He's a contagious player. He's a player that maybe the rest are not playing in the better level, and he creates good synergies and good dynamics into the game. As I say, I'm very happy having players like Manu, players like Didic, players like Chris, like Mateo. This sense of belonging, this type of players that they wanted to be here. This season. It's very important to have that. They had many offers, they had many opportunities to be in other places, but they decided to be here, and those are the things that make the difference at the end of the day.
Pure energy and a contagious player. That fires me up, and I think
Yeah.
that's something that other coaches have said about Manny before, right? This is the player he is.
Well, speaking about that, producer Benny on fire, contagious energy as well. That was a quick pickup on that clip. Impressive from him. But yeah, no, definitely agree on Aparicio. This is why we thought he'd be such an impact player with Atletico Ottawa, and to be able to show it right away. And like you said, that touch to keep the ball in, it looked a lot like his former Pacific teammate Marco Bustos. Maybe learned a little bit from him there. It had kind of those comparisons. So yeah, an incredible moment for him, and the signature moment from opening weekend for Atletico Ottawa, certainly.
Yeah, for sure, and I think a huge weight off Atletico Ottawa's shoulders to get that win. If they'd lost at home to start the year, I think maybe the doubt starts to creep in. Those voices in your head that you can't make go away, and I think it might have been able to snowball into a difficult start to the season, but to get off the ground like that is really positive. Just to put a bow on this game, let's wrap up with York, who I thought again played pretty well, especially in the first half. Again, we've talked a lot about how Ottawa's a new team. York is a pretty much brand new team as well. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Okay, 4 debuts in the starting 11. Would have been
Live
5 if
math.
Frank Stirring. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Tune in to watch Charlie do math on air. It would have been 5 debuts in the starting 11 if Frank Stirring hadn't been hurt in warmups. But no, Abatne comes in. We know that he's a reliable player for this team. But what did you see from York, and what reasons did you see for optimism in this group?
Well, they started really well, which was an issue last season. They
Mhm.
came out the better of the two sides, score the first goal, have a lot of good chances, and clearly, I think this is going to be a team that's able to create chances this year. They have a lot of those players who can move the ball through midfield, move the ball up quick. You mentioned voices in your head, though. The concern is they did 2.2 expected goals in that game, which is the most
Yeah.
of any club this weekend, including Vancouver, who scored 4, and they scored just 1. And if you're, Brian Wright, we talked about it, he missed like 15 big chances last year. He had a couple there, and you could see on the second one, like he was so frustrated. And a turning point moment maybe in this match is Ostarici's in alone, and obviously he just scored, so you give him some credit there to take on that opportunity, but he could have easily squared to Brian Wright. Then it's 2-0. Who knows if Ottawa can get back? It would have been so big for them if they could have gotten Wright up and running to open the season, but that being said, again, they created a lot of chances. You like to see that early in the year that they're doing well offensively. Ricci, again, really looks up for it this year, and if he can stay healthy, he'll be a massive player for them. So yeah, I liked what I saw, but again, they really need to be able to put games to bed like this. That's going to be critical.
Yeah, 14 shots for York. Again, a team where we can see the signs, we can see what they're trying to do, and it'll be a test for them to just start putting that ball on the net, which was again a problem at times last year. Let's move on from this game to Hamilton, where we saw Forge and Cavalry again. It always seems to be them. It's a final rematch. We're seeing the highlights now. But Mitchell, you were there at this game, so maybe let you take it away and tell me, what you noticed from this latest edition of the Forge Cavalry rivalry.
Yeah, stop me if you've heard this before. Cavalry come out; they're the better side. They press Forge really well. Line up in a back three with Kobza and Klomp and Montgomery, and they're able to really thwart Forge attacking wise. They come out, they score the opening goal on a brilliant play, Musi to Camargo, and then Forge, as they've been known to do. It was 13 points they collected at home last season from losing positions, and they've already got 3 this year. They scored 2, and it's the same 2 guys who did it in the final, just in reverse order this time. Tristan Borges and Benny Badibonga on 2 goals that I think, considering how Cavalry defended, I think it was, they limited them to those 2 shots on net, and both of them went in. They certainly would have wanted to, do a little bit better on these opportunities, but at the end of the day, I mean, Forge again, another comeback. They're going to want to start matches better, but if they can keep gaining points like this, it's going to be tough to count them out again this season.
Yeah, just so deflating for Cavalry though, right?
Oh, for sure.
To have another lead at Tim Hortons Field. I think they had a lead in the first game of the season last year in Hamilton as well,
Hmm.
and just not able to get the job done again, which is frustrating. We'll get back to Forge in a second, but you got to be pretty annoyed with letting that drop of your Cavalry, right?
Oh, you absolutely have to. Tommy Golden Jr. after the match said they were good, but they weren't great, and they need to be great if they want to reach the heights they were at last season. And
Hmm.
the one thing that maybe concerned me a little bit, one, obviously they get scored on twice, but there's not that counterpunch. Like once they got hit, the thing that we wanted to see from Cavalry this year was that ability to maybe bring on some fresh faces in attack and have them go forward and create chances. And didn't really see that after Forge scored. They were able to rather comfortably see the game out, and Warshevsky and Camargo started really well. There's a lot to like there, but yeah, I thought just the second wave of attack just wasn't there for Cavalry in this match. And there was so many games that they won by one goal last year, and that's a good sign of a team that is able to see out those matches, but also they kept a lot of matches really close. And
Hmm.
if they do that again this year, I think something like this might end up happening to them more often than not. So that's something that they're going to want to again. Like we said with York, like putting matches to bed is a big storyline for this first weekend because of how many leads got blown.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I don't think really reasons to panic if you're Cavalry. It's game
No.
one of the season. They're playing Forge. Obviously, plenty of time, and this is a very, very, very strong team that is pretty much entirely returning after pretty much walking to the league title last year by 13 points. But again, it's a similar story that we've seen before. Let's talk about Forge quickly, though. Before I get more of your thoughts, so I think I want to hear the voice of Bobby Smirniotis. It always kind of calms us down. I think it's always good to hear from him. So Benny, if you've got the clip, let's just hear what Bobby had to say after this win.
Yeah, one, it's a nice feeling to get 3 points on opening day. I've had a lot of feelings over 6 years or 5 years in the one game, so this is something that's new. So I think that's a good thing, and each game brings something a little bit different. We're just talking on the way up here. In the first half, we're playing against the wind. In the second half, we're somehow playing against the wind again for half of it. And we knew that was going to play a factor because that goes into tactics on how you need to move the ball, where do you need to go, how you can go a little bit quicker. Yeah, I thought we've done a good job today. If you look at those 2 goals, it's something we talk about and we work on quite often in training. It's something that you need to be in those zones to score goals, so I'm happy we've gotten our goals from there. And then there's been some excellent performances today, and I'll single in on Chris Kalongo in goal. His first start of the season, he's been an absolute rock, and it's always good to get that performance in from him.
Yeah, Chris Kalongo with a big performance for Forge. Mitch, you also singled out Malika Olabi-Belawu, I think, after this game. And, obviously a lot of familiar faces in this Forge team, but who impressed you most from that group?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like you said, Malika Olabi-Belawu. We saw him go up against Cade Cowell in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and
Hmm.
able to do quite a good job on him. So he gets to go up against Ali Musi, one of the premier attackers in the Canadian Premier League to start this season, and does a fantastic job on him. I thought, really limited him in terms of what he was able to do. He had some issues with playing the ball to the back at times. He gifted it to Musi one time, and then he goes and kind of manhandles him and takes the ball right back. So there was a lot of those, a lot of last second interventions from Malika Olabi-Belawu, and another great quote from Bobby, who was a quote machine to start this season. Was Malik's a guy who just loves to play defense. Like that's not something that we see
Hmm.
that much in modern football, where there's so many. Every fullback is a wing back, is all of a sudden a winger. Every center back, turns into John Stones, goes into the midfield. Like, even if you ask Alex Ashniotti Janssen what position he is, he will never let you say just central defender. He always wants to be a
Not a
midfielder as
chance.
well. So you've got Malik beside him, who really loves this center back role, really loves, sticking in those tackles and making those big plays. And in a match like this, that was huge, especially when Forge started a little bit slow, and did afford Cavalry some opportunities to have someone who was able to make those interventions was big. So like him,
Mhm.
Daniel Para, what a player. A really great ad, can invert centrally and did a really good job of that, where they drag the fullback out wide with Benny Badibanga and then just play a quick ball, and Para was able to run through those channels. So another player to like. And then that Borges Badibanga combo, and a lot of these attacking combos are starting to click a little bit. We saw it on the goal, and that's exciting if you're Forge for sure.
Yeah, I think so, man. Para is an exciting player. Young,
Absolutely.
obviously, Mexican pedigree, and again, kind of fills the exact position that Forge needed in this offseason. Kind of an interesting role for Tristan Borges, I think, in this game. I think he kind of a little bit more central at times, but again, he's a very good creative player, and he's a guy that if they can get him firing this year, he could be very, very dangerous. We know how good he was, a few years ago in this league. We know that last year was a bit of a frustrating one for him. There were injury issues and then form issues. He couldn't necessarily lock down a spot in the team. Obviously, he came through in one moment when it mattered, quite famously. But for him to get off the board immediately, or on the board, I suppose, immediately in this year is very, very good news for Forge. Let's wrap up the Saturday slate of games, though. Let's move on to the West Coast, Pacific, Vancouver Island. Again, this is, a game that I saw bits and pieces of while I was flying back from Ottawa, but um, two teams that I think I'm not sure what to make of. Definitely Pacific is a team that we were intrigued by because they've lost some big pieces this offseason and made some significant changes. I think more than they have in the last few years. But they win this one by 1 goal. They're outshot 13-4. Outpossessed pretty much 60-40 by Halifax. But the penalty, a pretty clumsy tackle from Julian Dunn that puts Pacific on the spot, and that's all they really needed, right?
Yeah, if we want to talk deja vu, like this was a lot like the playoff match where they played out in Halifax
Mm-hmm.
to end Halifax's season last year, where Pacific get really one moment in attack. Like if you look at their expected goals, I think a penalty is valued at like 0.76, so they had like 0.12 open play
Yeah.
expected goals. There wasn't much in attack for Pacific, but they made their one moment count, and then defensively really solid. Emil Gazdov, really fantastic start to the season, and that's good considering he has more really pushing him this year with Sean Melvin there. So to get off to such a confident start, and he was claiming balls really well. He made a brilliant save on Zach Fernandez. He's in our team of the week, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and fully deserved.
Mm-hmm.
That's really exciting, and you get some good performances at the back. Ali and Dom coming in, setting up that goal in some ways with the ball in behind to Rion Moore is really positive. He looks great in possession, and as advertised by James Merriman, as someone who can really help them hold the ball a little bit better and play out of the back, which is really good. And then you've got Lajeunesse and Amadume putting in shifts as well as young players. So it wasn't a vintage Pacific performance in terms of the attacking side of the ball, but defensively there's a lot to like and a lot to really build on there for this club.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I pulled up the XG. We're gonna do more math live on air. Obviously, Pacific with 0.88 expected goals in total in this game. The penalty obviously being 0.788 of them. Their next highest was 0.04, and Halifax had 7 chances that were worth more expected goals than that. Which is kind of indicative of how this game went. But yeah, you're right. Seeing Pacific being able to defend like that is something that will make James Merriman very happy, especially after they've lost Amir Didic. You know, especially with young players like Paul Hamadoumi in that defense. I think that there is a lot to like there. It's a good game for Emil Gazdov, which is very important. But just a last word on Halifax, Mitch. I think they probably felt like they deserved at least a point from this game, and I know we'll hear from him in a second because Patrice Geyser actually literally said that. But I think it is a lot of they do look like the Halifax we saw last year, where they're very intent on possessing the ball. They're very methodical in how they build up, and they certainly have that quality. They just need that final chance to come. And I think again, maybe it's like they were early last year, where again they're playing very well, but the results and the goals don't necessarily fall for them. Maybe it'll be a little bit of a quicker coming together process this year. I think they'll hope, but again, this is not a lot to be worried about if you're Halifax, right?
No, I mean, you look at where they changed their team, and it's mostly an attack. I mean, you've got Telfer there, you've got Valesky, you've got Probo. These are all new guys. They're going to take some time to click together, and I think that's really what we saw. They were getting into good areas. We saw some little glimpses of the kind of quality that Probo can provide in terms of balls in behind. We saw Telfer have some good opportunities, but that last touch, the last finish, wasn't quite there. And I don't think that's something that's concerning in game 1 of the season. If we're at game 10 of the season, then it's concerning. Game 1, you're more happy that they're just making these chances, happen. And you start to worry about that later on.
For sure. Not a lot of time left, but let's just wrap up with this game by hearing from Patrice Geyser, who I know again is not a guy to get too high or too low after a result, but I think is taking the positives for this one. So let's hear what he had to say after this game.
We were very unlucky not to get a point out of this. It stings. It sucks, but it's the first game of the season, and for this one, it's harder to say our legs are tired because we came in a little bit earlier. But the key is at the first game of the season to see the positives. We gave up a bad PK, and I literally feel, even if you look at the stats, our passes and our chances and our game kind of started when we gave up that goal. So credit to the group to bounce back, to keep going to the last whistle, and take this hunger and a little bit of passion and put it back in on Thursday. Not a lot of time to kind of sit and dwell and feel sorry about it.
All right, one more stop on our cross-country tour for opening weekend. Still in BC, Vancouver FC 4, Valor 1. This was an exciting game too. Again, one where a home team wins. All four home teams won this weekend, and a third game this weekend where the away team scores first and the other side has to dig deep. And Vancouver really dug deep. Again, it's a club record 4 goals for this team. I know that they had an eagle in attendance to deliver the coin. Maybe they were fired up by that. I certainly would be. But some good scenes in Langley. Mitchell, what impressed you about Vancouver FC this weekend?
Yeah, I like that eagle. They took a little bit to land, but once they did, it was pretty emphatic and electric. That second half, red card aside, there's a lot to love about how they clicked in attack and the chances they were creating. We knew a lot of these guys obviously have proven it in this league before. You talk about Moses Dyer, who is Valor's all-time leading goal scorer, funny enough. Batar, Alejandro Diaz. This team played a lot of preseason matches in Vancouver, and maybe not against the caliber of opposition that some of the other clubs played. Certainly the ones that went down to Mexico, but they played a lot together, and you could kind of see that. I mean, the attacking cohesion was really there, and in an early Canadian Premier League season where a lot of clubs have changed over, especially in attack, that little bit of cohesion is going to make a big difference, and I think we clearly saw that for Vancouver.
Yeah, I think so. So many good signs for this club. Gavi Batar being up for it. Alejandro Diaz with 2 assists for this team. His first 2 assists for Vancouver. That's really good. Him developing a partnership with Moses Dyer would be huge for that team. Paris G was phenomenal. Again, as he often is. A very, very positive way to start the season if you're Vancouver, a team that obviously has been very deliberate in its recruitment this offseason. A lot of Vancouver guys in this group. What is this? And 2 of the goals were from new Vancouver-born players to this group in G and David Norman. But certainly very exciting. What of Valor, Mitch? I mean, this is again a team that we didn't really know what to make of in the offseason. Again, another team that's very, very different from what they looked like last year. Quite a few new players to the CPL. Players that have been at other teams and have come to look for kind of more minutes for a bigger opportunity at Valor. Sean Hundal obviously played for Vancouver last year, and here he is in Valor colors again, playing against his old club. What did you make of this team, and do you think there's progress or signs of hope for this group?
I think the first half was a sign of progress. I mean, you can clearly see the way they want to play when things click well in terms of having Alarcon and Antonoglu really dictating play from out wide. Schweibel looks like a great add in terms of his finishing ability and what he can add in the center. Verhoeven, adds a little bit more quality in the center of the park and able to pick out some of those passes that they're going to need going forward. So there was a lot to like in the first half, particularly, but those are some really tough times to allow goals. Obviously, late in the first half, and then they allow one, literally on one of the first few kicks of the second half. So that's always going to be a gut punch. And then defensively, I mean, this looked like a backline that's never played together before. Let's be quite honest. Like, there was some real disorganization, and on almost all those goals, they're all back. They're all there in those positions, but they still don't get to the Vancouver players quick enough, and they weren't always sure who to step and who should stay, and that's going to take time. That's going to take communication, and I think that was probably the bigger concern for me. Is you've got 5 defenders back, and Vancouver's still getting open looks. So that's what they're going to have to really take a hard look in the mirror and figure that out.
Yeah, obviously really tough to concede, right before and right after halftime. It's, as you said, kind of a gut punch, and hard to kind of recollect yourself after that. But they kind of let the floodgates open a little bit, and it got out of hand. Just a couple more things to take care of on the show this week as we wrap up. Let's start with putting the standings up there. I know it's only been 1 week, but I'm sure Vancouver FC fans would be quite happy to see their club atop the table for the first time in club history, I believe. That +3 goal difference is keeping them ahead of the other 3 winning teams this week. And obviously, we've got another slate of games coming very shortly next week. We actually start with a Canadian Championship game on, I think, Thursday or Tuesday. No, that's next week. Sorry, I can't.
on our math and on our schedule reading.
Game on Thursday, though, when Vancouver take on Halifax, 7 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock p.m. Atlantic time. If you're a Wanderers fan, so get the coffee out for that one. Friday night, it's Pacific and Valor at 7 o'clock Pacific time. Atletico Ottawa at home again on Saturday with a 2 o'clock kickoff against Cavalry FC. And then finally on Sunday, we've got York United hosting Forge FC at 4 o'clock at York Lions Stadium in their home opener, the first 905 derby of the year. Lots to be excited about this week, Mitch.
Not the Canadian Championship.
Not a Canadian Championship. I got a little too excited. That's next week. And there's only one game next week anyway. The rest of the games the week after on May 1st. But, I love the Canadian Championship. I got overexcited. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. It might happen again. Anyway, the last couple things that we're going to do this year on the show. First of all, we're going to pick our winners of the week. Mitch, this can be a player. It can be a team. It can be a concept, a vague, nebulous idea that you have. That's your big winner of the week. We're going to do this every week, and I will let you go first so that I have to pick one on the fly.
Sounds good. I'll go for Vancouver-born players making their hometown return. We saw David Norman drop the junior and score a goal. Paris G obviously having a man of the match performance. So many of those other guys that just came in and looked great, and to be able to start the year with a big win at home is massive for that club, and huge for those guys to get to celebrate in that way.
Yeah, speaking of massive, I think my winner of the week is going to be Chris Twarduk. Scoring at home, in your hometown on your debut for the first time he's ever played professionally for a hometown club, and he scores a winner in his debut. Absolutely rips the skin off his knees with the slide down in front of the section where I think he had about 100 friends and family in attendance. That guy was very, very happy after the game. So I'm very happy to, it's always nice to see a smile on a player's face, especially like that, and how much it means. So,
I was going to say, just quickly, everyone go watch Charlie's interview with him, A, because it's great, and B, like, that was the first thing I checked was I looked at his knees, and there is no skin on them.
No.
And,
Yeah, the poor guy like limped into the press conference room after. He said he had like a Charlie horse just on top of one of his knees as well, and they're just kind of dripping. Oh, poor guy, but worth it. I think he would say that he would do that 10 times out of 10 if he's given the opportunity to again. Anyway, the last thing we're going to do here, we are running a little bit longer than expected, but we always have some room for stoppage time. And what that's going to be this year is the one and only producer Benedict Rhodes is going to join us here on the show for a couple minutes of stoppage time. I think we've got a couple questions that we've gotten from CPL followers and listeners. So we're gonna do a bit of a mailbag segment every week on this show. So again, make sure you send in your questions for next week when you've got them. Benny, we will let you take the floor.
Yes, sir. We have 4 questions from the audience. We'll start with Jason on Twitter, who asks, what, if anything, surprised you on match day 1?
Surprised me. Mitchell, you can go first so I can think.
I'll say just how cohesive Vancouver looked in attack. I mean, scoring 4 goals right away for a team that struggled to do so at times last year was very impressive.
I think I was surprised by, again, Atletico Ottawa being able to flip a switch and play a different kind of football within a game after falling behind. That's something we haven't seen from them very often, and I think maybe the biggest positive sign from them this week.
The next one comes from a former host of the CPL Newsroom, Marty Thompson, who asks,
Oh,
what
no.
will it take over the next 2 to 3 Atletico Ottawa games to convince you that they're on the same level as the teams of Forge and Cavalry?
I mean, for me, I don't think that is something that I can see over 2 to 3 games. What's made Forge and Cavalry so good in this league is their consistency and their ability to do it over the course of a season. So, even if Ottawa go ahead and win their, the 3-0 to start the season, it's still gonna, again, it'll be mid-season if they're on the top of the table in July, then I'll be like, yeah, this is for real. And obviously, I'm not saying they're not, and I absolutely expect them to probably be around that, but. Again, it's about doing it over a full season, right, Mitch?
What Charlie said, just shorter.
Yeah, it took a while, but whatever. Whatever, man. All right, Benny, next one. Let's go. We'll be quicker.
Next comes from Josh on Twitter, who asks, is there any reason to believe we're not heading towards another Forge and Cavalry final?
I'd say yes. I think I think Ottawa will certainly have a say. I think Halifax will certainly have a say. I think there's a lot more I'm going to have to see from Forge and Cavalry to be entirely convinced that they're still a step above everyone else in this league.
Yeah, we have to see what they look like when they play against other teams and not just each other.
Exactly.
And the last one comes from Twitter from our friends over at Canucks Abroad, who shared a quote from Phil DeSantos, which was, I don't want to flirt with the line. I want to marry the playoff spot and see what that brings us. So the question is that the best quote of the 2024 CPL season thus far? And if not, what is?
I mean, it's hard to beat that. I'm not even sure what that means, really.
Yeah.
That's
what makes it so good.
Wants to be
open to interpretation.
Yeah, naturally. Thanks, Phil. That probably is the quote of the weekend. I personally enjoyed Chris Twardek being like, just sitting down at the press conference table and just you could see his eyes light up. He said, I had a vision that I was going to score in front of my friends and family. It was just a very animated moment that you don't normally get in a press conference. But I actually didn't hear that quote from Phil, and I think that that might actually have to take it, I think.
Yeah, I like Bobby saying that the wind blew in both directions. Like for them,
yeah,
when they're playing, we heard that earlier in the show. It was very like old man. We walked uphill both ways, kind of vibes. But he's not wrong. Like the wind was hilarious at Tim Hortons Field. Malcolm Shaw might have saved Christian Jack's life on a switch that went cross field, and he just barely got it with the tip of his hand. So if Cavalry need a third keeper this year, it might be Malcolm Shaw.
Absolutely. All right, we are
Afshin Guppy. Sorry, just quickly. Afshin Guppy said he'll bleed for the city and fight to the death for Vancouver FC. So that was a pretty good one. I think maybe a little bit dramatic, but definitely
so dramatic.
Vancouver fans will run through the walls for that guy.
Yeah. Oh, I love that too. That's awesome. That is wow. A bleed for this city. Wow. Good for him. Good for him. Always love the passion. Always love also doing this show. We're trying to keep it a little bit tighter this year. I know this is still a 40-minute show, but we'll hopefully be able to cut down on my rambling mostly next week. We'll get in a groove. Again, make sure you guys send in any questions or thoughts or ideas you have are always open. And again, we're going to do this little mailbag segment at the end of every week. Benedict, thank you very much for producing. Mitchell, thank you very much for tolerating me for the last, half hour, 40 minutes. And thank you all very, very much for watching the CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen. And we will see you next week.
No keeps it along the ground. Diaz, a quick back. Moses there with the hammer. Brilliant play from the Eagles, leading to an equalizer in the final minute of the first half. Comes in on